dear students and viewers. Today, in this short video, I'm going to talk about the political element and the political history of Indo-Pakistan subcontinent as portrayed by Bepsi Sidhwa in her novel Ice Candyman. For this purpose, today it is the chapter 15 of the book. In this chapter, we have a clear description of the history through which the people of Indo Pakistan had to undergo because of the partition of India and creation of Pakistan. For this purpose, I have selected so few passages. For example, here is one passage which is green. It says about some scholar, and that scholar is doing the things in such a way which seem to Lenny not so attractive and not so good. So that is why it has been talked about in that way. This passage is not that significant because it very less talks about the people or the scholars who were at that time talking about partition, about politics, or were appearing dervish like people. That is not that significant. However, the humor of Bepsi Sidhwa can be seen in this passage when we see that the teeth of that scholar are palm stained teeth, and as a result, zoo animals would be envious of him. That's the type of very slight, very little humor created by Sidhwa. But more so, we need to go to the next passages in the chapter. For example, if you look at this page, you can find some of the slogans which are in italicized form. These slogans say Jai Hind, and Pakistan Zindabad. So these slogans remind us about the kind of history we have at our background, or the history through which our generations have lived, and Pakistan was created out of that. These slogans were raised by the people of India, but the people of India seem to be divided on the basis of these slogans. Like one group was saying Jai Hind, and another group was saying Pakistan Zindabad. So in that way, the ideological divide was already visible, and the physical divide still was to be experienced with the passage of time. So let's go forward and see what else we can say. For example, here there are some lines which I have put in green. These say, we are gradually withdrawing from the shadow cast by the Queen's statue in the park. As the British prepare to leave, we meet less and less at the park and more often at the wrestlers restaurant. So Queen's statue is being talked about, that the people are gradually going away from the shadow of this Queen statue. That is literal words which are used here, and in fact it's going to say that the people of India are going to come out of the influence of colonization of the British people on India. Gradually, Indian people are becoming free, and the things are happening like that. So, this symbolical statement by Sidhwa goes to show that the British were preparing in order to go back, and the Indian people were preparing in order to, become independent in their own country. So the post-colonial aspect of this novel cannot be denied, although it's also the part of the history, how the British people came and how they tried to decolonize at that time in order to go back to their country and provide freedom and independence to the people of India. Now, if you see here again, something of the political will be here, the history will be there. For example, continuing the conversation and the feeling, our arrival has interrupted. Masir says, if the Punjab is divided, Lahore is bound to go to Pakistan. There is a Muslim majority here. Lahore will stay in India, says the government house gardener, cutting him short. He is sitting next to the butcher. There is too much of Hindu money here, he says in his quite seasoned way. They own most of the property and business in the city, and but there are too many Muslims, insists Masir. So what? People don't matter, money does. So this is the passage which goes to reflect that the divide was imminent, and the cities like Lahore and Amritsar were also to be divided either to India or to Pakistan. And here the debate between Masir and the gardener, government house gardener, is of the views that one Muslim have about Lahore and the other Hindus have about Lahore. Muslims, for example, say that it's a Muslim majority Lahore, so that is why it will go to Pakistan. And the Hindus say that not the majority matter, but the money matters here, that will make Lahore go into India. So the people were also divided, ideology was also divided, and the geography was going to be divided. This represents the people of, or the desire of the Hindus and Muslims, where the important centers which hold the Muslim people or Hindu people should go. And that was the type of history being talked about in the 1940s when British were about to decolonize. The same thing is being repeated here in these passages. If we go further down the chapter, we find another passage where here we find something else as well, where the passage says, "All at once, the sick zoo attendant shouts, and what about us? So loudly that my eyes pop open. The Sikhs hold more farmland in Punjab than the Hindus and Muslims put together. They don't say the butcher flatly." No, different characters are sitting at the eating place, at one eating place, and they are talking and discussing about the partition of India, where the Muslims will go, where the Hindus would go, and how about the Sikhs. The most important matter about the province of Punjab was that it was mainly occupied by the Sikhs also in the eastern Punjab, as it is even today. And as a result, the Sikhs wanted the Punjab altogether towards them, but neither the Muslims wanted this nor the Hindus wanted this. But the Hindus were exploiting this type of situation at that time in the history, it can be seen. And the Sikhs were, up to some extent, trying to follow the same guideline of the Hindus rather than attaching themselves with the Muslims. So, in that way, as was mentioned in the history, same was the thing talked about by Sidhwa in this novel when she talks about the Sikhs holding of the farmlands in Punjab. So that issue was there inside Punjab also at that time, as mentioned in history, and the same thing is talked about by Sidhwa in by mentioning the political history. Let us see more about that. For example, here we are talking about more political element. For example, the passages say the British have advised Jinnah to keep clear from bastards, says the butcher as just offensively. The Engrays call you a bloody nuisance. We don't want to have anything to do with you bastards. Either roared the puny Sikh, sounding more and more like the tiger. In his name, history will repeat itself, says the restaurant owning wrestler phlegmatically. He slowly lowers his arm and stretches it across the table. Once the line of division is drawn, in the Punjab, all Muslims to the east of it will have their balls cut off. His quietly spoken words have the impact of an explosion, and as in aftermath of a blast, the silence excludes all extraneous sound, the shrill voices of the children in the gully, the noise of traffic from the chungi, only Ice Candyman's voice as if from a distance saying, "Oi, you gone crazy, you son of an owl," and the wrestler quietly saying, "My cousin's a constable in Amritsar district." He says the Sikhs are preparing to drive the Muslim out of the East Punjab to the other side of the Ravi. But there are Muslims majority districts, says Masir. The Sikhs are fighting arm of the Hindu and they are prepared to use it. Like when they butchered every single Musliman from the Ambala to Amritsar a century ago during the Mughal Empire's breakup. So these are the lines which are really very significant with respect to the conflicts which were germinating in India at the time of partition. The conflicts were basically between Hindus and Muslims, but the Sikhs were also a big threat both to the Hindus and the Muslim because they too wanted some kind of share in order to establish their own independence, and that is why they were also working against the Muslims. That if the country Pakistan is created, they would like to have their share as well, and that was the kind of conflict and violence that could erupt at that time because the Sikhs. Sidhwa has quoted history also, as for example, she says that when Mughal Empire was to break up at that time also, Sikhs made a lot of damage to the life and property of the Muslim people, and she is referring the same thing once again that it could happen if the partition take place, and definitely these things happened like that. History is a witness to that, and so Sidhwa is trying to make us realize how difficult it was for Pakistan to be created, how difficult it was for the people to absorb all that division and to go from one side to the other, and how much violence had taken place at that time. All that political history Sidhwa is talking about in these passages. This passage that I have again selected on this page, it says that the English are not to be relied on, yar, interposes Ice Candy Man, pushing his empty plate away to show he's done with eating. They are too busy packing off with their loot to care with what happens. But that Nehru, he's a sly one. He's got Mountbatten eating out of his one hand and the English wife out of his other. What not? He's the one to watch. So in that way, you see another aspect of the history that how Nehru was related to the English people of that time that is being talked about in this passage. That possibly favors will be done to Hindus because Nehru was the representative of Hindus, and Sidhu has very beautifully talked about the engagement of this leader with the English people, Mountbatten and his wife, by using the metaphor of one hand and the other hand. So, in that way, the favors possibly may come to that. So, another beautiful, very big chunk of history has been talked about by Sidhwa when she says these things about the Hindu leadership of that time. And ultimately we reach to the close of this chapter and trying seeing here in order to find out how political history has been talked about in this chapter. So we can say that Sidhwa has definitely thrown a lot of light on the political history of Indo-Pak. She's talking about the leaders and she's talking about the common people who were the representative of India of that time, and they were talking about the difficulties and the violence and the problems that come to the people of that time. And in that way she is reflecting on the history and the partition. Therefore here in this chapter at least becomes the biggest theme of the whole book or the text by Sidhwa. So in this way students can quote a lot of passages, especially those passages which I have colored, in order to make their assignments and to use them in order to confirm and validate their point of view if they use these text forms from here from chapter 15. So chapter 15 is altogether the history of India and Pakistan as reflected by Bepsi Sidhwa. Thank you very much for watching. That was all about this lesson. Hopefully if you like this, do not fail to hit the subscribe button. Click on the subscribe button. That will add to something good to this channel as well. Thank you.